Hello and welcome to another exciting edition of your Pittsburgh Steelers show on your SteelerFury.com podcast. I am your host, Will Mastersack, a.k.a. Bradshaw to Ben, also known as Accidental Zen on Twitter. And yes, this is a playoff beard. Don't ask. And it's about as real as my finger. Yeah, there we go. Anyway, but we have a playoff football to talk about on the show. This is excellent. We haven't had one of these for a while. So very excited to be with you tonight and have the full host of cohorts. First of all, usually from the home of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, but tonight, somewhere in Florida, good luck. His name is Jeremy Coleman, also known as Smith is Smoking. He's with us. How are you, sir?
Doing good.
What part of Florida are you in?
I'm in Palm Beach Shores.
Oh, nice. The president will be coming to join you soon, I think.
Yeah, well, if he can get out of the Capitol, yeah.
Exactly. And also with us from the greater Pittsburgh area, Suburban Zone 22, I think it is exactly. His name is Steel Perch. He's with us. Finally, he decided to join us tonight after skipping last week. Perch is with us. How are you, sir?
It was a Veterans Week off last week for maintenance. But I'm back and I'm playoff ready.
A Veterans Week off. Yeah, baby. And also with us from the greater, not too close to Georgia, but just enough in South Carolina. His name is Dom. He goes by FC. We'll be pinpointing his exact GPS location at the end of the show if you're interested. FC is with us. How are you, sir?
I'm 8 miles from Georgia in North Augusta, South Carolina, and I am so happy I don't have to hear another fucking political ad for 2 years.
Maybe. You hope. Let's hope there's not another emergency going on.
You guys have had stuff over with basically since like November. Imagine November, December, and into January. I was ready to kill myself. You just could not get away from the commercials. You could not.
Yeah. That doesn't really sound very fun.
No. I was like looking for like Allstate commercials or Liberty Mutual. I was begging for them. They didn't by that point.
Excellent. Well, first of all, I have to say, because I know Perch didn't know it, and probably some of you tuning into the show don't realize it, but back in the day on Steeler Fury, and I'm talking about, like the good old days. It's been a while, but our man Dom FC here on the show used to do a world-famous Steelers preview each week that went in depth, talking about the matchups in the game, and was probably the best piece of Steelers content that you could come up with each week. And it's extremely time-consuming and hard to write anything. Trust me, I know, having done the game recaps every week. But I was a great admirer of FC's article, and it was very sad to see it go. But guess what? I talked him into doing one. It's up on the front page at SteelerFury.com. And ladies and gentlemen, prepare to be amazed. You have to go see this. Are we not officially calling it a gospel, FC? What's the?
Whatever you like. I'm good with it.
There you go.
I'm always for the people.
You're always for the people. Is that what you said?
No, I said I'm a man of the people.
A man of the people. Yes, exactly. And I'm sure we're going to hear some details from that. But I just wanted to acknowledge that we got it all going on, not just the full house here at the show, but we got a gospel up. And Perch just told me this is the most amazing thing. He is going to revive the post-game analysis of the Steelers this week. Isn't that right, Perch?
The fifth quarter will be back pending the Steelers win. If they lose, screw it. I'm not doing shit.
That sounds pretty good. We got a lot of things going on. We got a playoff beard. We got stuff going on. I'm going to start with you, Jeremy. Your take on everything that's transpired since the last time we got together. So just quickly, let's touch on the Mason Rudolph appearance. Did he do anything to make you feel differently about his future than you did before the game? And if so, how much?
Well, I still don't think he's like the franchise heir apparent to Ben. I do think he played a much better game than I anticipated. He actually pushed down the pushed the ball down the field with some velocity, which threw me for a little bit of a loop because I didn't think we were going to see a lot of that. It's kind of nice to see the deep game work with another quarterback in the offense. So hopefully that's good things to come just for the Pittsburgh offense in general. But I think he played better than my expectations. I have no reason to think he won't be on the roster next year. He's still under contract. So,
Perch, what was your take?
As far as Rudolph, I was kind of a fan of his at Oklahoma State. I watched a lot of games and him and James Washington. I'm like, man, this guy can really push the ball down the field. I think that's the first time as a pro I really saw him accurately throw deep downfield and confidently throw deep downfield. So it was kind of like the old Oklahoma State version. He held the ball too long a couple of times, and when he does feel the pressure, he goes straight to shit. But I don't have any faith of him ever being a starting quarterback in the league, but he showed me enough to think that, hey, he might be a competent number 2, which is more than the bar's pretty low at this point, right?
Yeah,
but,
more than they've had in some time. Yeah, exactly. That's funny. I actually, been a big critic of his. I just not really bought into Mason Rudolph as an NFL quarterback, especially not as the heir apparent. But aside from the seam throw to Chase Claypool, that was very similar to what the seam throw that Ben threw to Chase the week earlier. Same route and same kind of inside leverage. And I noticed when he tried to drive that ball that it sailed high and to the right, which is a problem that he had last year on the similar kind of throws. But that's a small nitpick compared to where he was the last time we saw him, and certainly the deep balls that he was able to sort of throw more touch ball deep. He did excellently at those. I thought those were really good throws, and at least it feels like if you need him for a play or two, you're not completely dead in the water, which I might have said a year ago if we needed him in the playoffs. So FC, I'll just turn it to you first. What did we see in this Browns game that will carry over to next week, good or bad? Because some of it is doesn't really the Steelers weren't necessarily showing their whole hand, and I'm not sure what Cleveland was either. But what was your take on what we see that will translate to this week's game?
Something that I've seen that surprised me a lot was how much Jedrick Wills Jr. struggled with the speed, variety in pass rush moves, and quickness of the Steelers' outside linebackers, especially Alonzo Highsmith. You know what you're going to get from T.J. Watt. He's an elite pass rusher. For all the good that we visually think of with Alonzo Highsmith, I believe he has 2 sacks on the year. He had some pressures, and he played very well. He was a player that I really keyed in on. Because Willis Jr. is a good player. He's a little bit raw, but he's very talented. He's large, and he has good feet. And I just gave him everything he wanted, and could have easily had 2 or 3 sacks in the game.
Yeah, I guess the question is, just as a follow-up, do you think now, having seen the arsenal that Alex Highsmith threw at him, that Wills is going to come back and be better prepared this week and do better in the matchup? In other words, was it worth throwing all that stuff at him last week?
I think it was, because if you catch him setting for a speed rush, he has a great spin move. I think that he's going to make Willis a little bit hesitant. A little bit, he's going to think instead of just naturally play. And I didn't even get his head a little bit. So, no, I think that if a pass rusher shows that he has something on an offensive tackle, that offensive tackle got far more worries than the pass rusher figuring out, the offensive tackle figuring out what the pass rusher does. I just think that, there's just certain guys that give certain players problems, and Highsmith might be the type of player that gives Wills problems. And there really hasn't been many pass rushers that have this year. I mean, Jedrick Wills Jr. had a pretty good year. He took on some pretty decent pass rushers, and it just seemed like Highsmith gave him problems.
Yeah, that is true. Aside from the first week against Baltimore, he had some problems. But yeah, I think you're right. For the most part, he's kind of handled what's come at him. Perch, what's your take on this sort of carryover, playing the same team 2 weeks in a row, especially a division opponent that you've already played twice?
What a massive advantage for the Steelers to be able to have that game last week that didn't mean shit, that they can put their backups in and play kind of vanilla and watch exactly what the Cleveland Browns were going to do to game plan for you to try to beat you in a must-win playoff scenario game. That happened, right? So now the Steelers can go back and look at every way that they Cleveland tried to attack them and what worked and what didn't. Basically, they gave you their game plan. There's not too much they could have hid in that game. What a huge, massive, advantage that is. And now the Browns basically can't practice all week. Their head coach and their offensive play caller won't be there at the game. They're going to be down a starting guard and a starting safety. And to me, it's such a massive, massive advantage for the Steelers. One, they physically dominated the first matchup. Two, they almost won the second matchup with, basically their practice squad out there playing. We're able to basically sit back and watch how the Browns were going to attack and game plan against them. And three, be able to hide a lot of stuff and mix some of the Josh Dobbs stuff in. So, it basically sets up to me, if they lose this game, it's by far the worst playoff loss in Steelers history. Everything is in their favor. Yeah,
it really does seem like it. Yeah. And Jeremy, it feels like Kevin Stefanski was a big part of that, sort of changing their fortunes this year and a big part of their success. And now you don't have that guy calling plays for you. I think it's kind of crazy that the head coach can't even, from what I understand, he's not even allowed to participate from afar. Like you would think that they would have figured out something where they would let him, communicate directly with the team somehow, but I guess they're not even going to allow that. That seems like a huge disadvantage when your coach is a play caller. It's one thing if you're Tomlin and you're preparing your team the whole week, or Chuck Noll even, where they kind of let them, their assistants get out there and do the work on game day. But what a big disadvantage that is.
Yeah, the NFL current rule is that the head coach has to be there physically for him to have any communication whatsoever. It's funny because you would think in a COVID full season that they would have found a way to make electronic communication work from outside the stadium. Obviously, they're not going to allow that.
Yeah, and I know they're concerned that the coach is going to see or hear something from the broadcast that he wouldn't be able to get the advantage of it were he at home. So I mean, I get it, but man, if you see what their offense looked like the last couple of years, and then you see what it looked like with this guy calling the shots, feels like that was a big difference. That maybe in the scripted plays you still get kind of a feel for his play calling, but I'm not sure who it was I read this week that was talking about after they get past the first part of the game, what will Cleveland's play calling look like? That should be interesting. It's Perch. It's Pitt great. Alex Van Pelt calling plays, is it not for the Browns?
Yes, sir, it is, and I wouldn't call him great.
Yeah, I was using the air quotes. The great Alex Van Pelt. Although, Alex Van Pelt is maybe the second best quarterback they've had since Marino. I mean, maybe.
Well, that's a tough one. I'd have to go through. I mean, he was decent. But
Kenny Pickett. I think Pickett's
yeah, Pickett's pretty good. Yeah, but I mean, they haven't had a real good run of quarterbacks. That is for sure.
Great. Darnell Dickerson.
Oh yeah, there you go. Sure, Darnell Dickerson. Well, FC, what do your sense of what the Browns can possibly do given their situation this week and the fact that it's a matchup that the other team has totally got advantages going on. I mean, are they just going to play the "it's us against the world" card? I mean, is that where we're headed for this?
I mean, they'll attempt to. I mean, what they would like to do is run the ball 55 times, throw the ball 20 times, and win an ugly game in Pittsburgh. I mean, it's the Steelers' defense's responsibility to make sure that doesn't happen. The strength of the Cleveland Browns at this point, you would say, is their offensive line and running in, the backs. And, the strength of the Pittsburgh Steelers defense is probably the three defensive linemen and T.J. Watt. you know, I love Minka, but you also have Edmonds. Most likely no Joe Hayden this week unless somebody's heard differently than I.
Yep.
So it's going to be, you know, the Steelers front seven versus the Browns front seven. Old AFC Central football, baby.
Perch, I'm going to go back to you for a second. You know, the Browns, it feels like to me, the thing that the Browns ought to do coming out in this game is try to see if they can dominate the Steelers running the football. Because to me, it's, you know, the Steelers have had times this year where they really tightened the screws on the run game. But the Browns offer something pretty special in that regard, even without Bitonio. It just feels like that they, you know, Nick Chubb is that's a load, that guy. And I'm wondering if you think, you know, the Browns might be able to get some momentum and keep the game close by just absolutely pounding the rock against the Steelers and going for play action opportunities.
Yeah, to me, I think that Browns fans are probably a little bit disturbed last week for them giving up on the run a little bit too quick. That's what they have to hang their hat on, right? I mean, nobody really trusts Baker Mayfield out that much. Those wide receivers really aren't super dynamic. They've got more possession guys. You know, it's just it's nice to watch a running back that has speed, power, and vision, because we have guys that don't have any of those three traits in our back.
Yeah.
So, you know, having somebody who's having a couple of backs that have all three of those is pretty nice. But that's got to be what they got to be thinking, to shorten the game, keep it close, hope to force Ben or the Steelers receivers and running backs into a fumble or an interception or something, and, you know, win a sloppy, close, lower scoring game, because really they had a hell of a time scoring on our backups last week. They couldn't really score at all in the first matchup. It was just an annihilation. And when they did throw the ball in the first matchup, we had a pick six by Minka and another pick by Sutton, and it didn't go well for them. So they've got to look at it and say, hey, we got 2 games worth of evidence here. We've had a little bit of success, at least running the ball. They have to just come out and just run, and hope to play good defense and catch a couple breaks to win the game.
I mean, Jeremy, do you think it's a chance that the Browns adopt the Steelers, philosophy of their 2005 run and try to come out in this game and kind of surprise the Steelers with some play action passing early in the game? Because that's another, thing that if you really hyped up to stop the run, you think we're going to shut down their run and shut down their offense, maybe they come out and try to do something else.
I mean, I could definitely see that. I mean, they had a touchdown to Austin Hooper off play action in this past matchup. I mean, that'd be an area where I'd be looking to expose, our linebackers in coverage. We're still, without Devin Bush in there, we don't really have a guy who can run with, athletic tight ends or, play guys from a mismatch perspective. So I would definitely be using play action, one, to get the Steelers thinking we're going to sell out to stop the run, and then just go right over our heads. It wouldn't also surprise me if you see a few trick plays. Jarvis Landry has thrown a pass or time or two. So, I mean, this is the Browns Super Bowl, to get their first playoff win in, I don't know, how many years has it been now since they've won a playoff game?
A long time. Yeah, I'll get you an exact number on that in a second. But, yeah, it's been more than 20 years.
Oh, no.
Yes.
Playoff win? 1970 something. I think it's before Perch and I were born.
Wow. Before you guys were born. Jesus. Could that possibly be true?
No, that can't be right.
Brian Sipe, they had to win in the Sipe years.
Yeah, or the Bernie Kosar years.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that was before I was born.
They made it to the AFC Championship at the time.
What was I going to say? Now, see, I forgot. You guys got me all distracted about when the Browns won a playoff game.
94. They beat the Patriots in 94.
Oh, there you go. That's not actually that long ago.
You were probably born by then, Jeremy.
Yeah, possibly.
I wasn't born by then. Yes.
I wasn't.
If not, we might be your dad.
Yeah. I was going to say the thing about that we were just Jeremy was just mentioning about covering the tight ends and covering not just one running back but multiple running backs from Cleveland who have receiving skills. The Steelers, the difference between last week and this week is they're adding Terrell Edmonds in, who's been actually very good covering tight ends this year, and it looks like they're going to get Spillane back. FC, that seems like a nice antidote to what the Browns might try to do.
It's nice to get both players back. Nick Chubb's going to catch the screen pass. He's going to catch a leak out. Kareem Hunt's the concern. He can run routes. He's fast. He really hasn't done a ton of it. I say in my article, every time I see Vince Williams or Avery Williamson go into coverage, I hold my breath, say a little prayer.
Yeah.
The thing about Spillane is he's not a special athlete, but you could just tell from watching him play, and we haven't got to see a ton of snaps, but he really reads offenses well. He understands what offensive concepts are. I believe that he was a pretty good offensive player in high school. So he's smart. So that's where he makes some of the plays that he makes in coverage. And he's made, a few more than people realize in the limited action that he's seen. But we missed Devin Bush, of course. Terrell Edmonds does a nice job versus tight ends, especially tight ends he feels that he's more athletic than, because he'll get right up on them, get right in their back pocket. And I believe he's every bit as athletic as every tight end, Harrison Bryant, David Njoku included, that the Browns have. The play-action pass game does concern me, but play-action pass is a lot of times quarterback's going to be under pressure, and that's not where Baker Mayfield's at his best.
Sure. Perch, the other big difference this week is you get this guy TJ Watt coming back. And between Spillane and Watt, they're excellent counters to one thing that Baker Mayfield really likes to do that he does very well, which is roll right and cause some problems, either running the football or passing the football sometimes. And I have a feeling that game, the play that clinched the game last week, that quarterback sweep, I got a feeling that's not going to happen so much with TJ Watt and Spillane in the game.
Yeah, absolutely. And, Baker Mayfield's a little jackass and pounding his chest after winning that game, and those guys mocking Juju's dance in the locker. I mean, come on, you beat the Steelers C squad in a game they weren't trying by 2 points. They need to pay for that. But yeah, you're definitely right there. And what you guys talked about before in the first matchup, Bud Dupree whooped Jedrick Wills for 2 sacks, and they're going to have to double TJ Watt, which means they're going to have to leave Highsmith one-on-one again, and Highsmith's going to win that matchup, and he's going to be pushing the pocket and push him right into TJ Watt and to it, and it's going to be a long day for Mayfield. If they can't get that run game going, they're going to be in a world of hurt. Yeah,
and also adding in some guy named Cam Hayward as well, according to my notes here. So, you can't, no place to
Cam
step
versus the backup guard too, right? You got Cam versus the backup guard next week.
Yeah, it's not the best situation for sure.
They made who they're going to start at guard a mystery. Nobody knows.
Oh, they don't know who they're going to start. You mean that's that kind of mystery?
Yeah, I'm sure they know who they're going to start. They haven't announced it.
Yeah, that's what I mean. We don't know. Because we'd have 10 pages of notes on a guy that played at Alcorn State if that's who they were starting, right?
Actually, Appalachian State was my guess, but yes.
Who's the guy from Appalachian State they have?
Lamb is his name. And oh my God, is he fucking massive? He's one of the large. He is large. I'm not saying
good linemen there the last couple of years. Yep.
So I went and I looked at him on the field goal team of all places, and I was like, oh my God. Yeah, I would kick him inside because they're at their 4th option at left guard with Antonio being down, Nick Harris going out, somebody else is down, so they're down to Lamb or another guy that I never heard of.
Wait, so Harris is out as well? That I didn't hear.
They went on IR. He's hurt.
Isn't Michael Nunn the other guy? I thought he was the starter.
Wow, yeah, that's ugly for
University of Maryland.
That we touched upon injuries for the Browns and who's going to be out. Olivier Vernon is actually a pretty big loss for them as well.
Yeah, that's a very big loss. Yeah, it's just sort of shaping up as one of those games where, they're so shorthanded and, it's hard to not recall some Steelers games against shorthanded teams that turned out to be real struggles. So let us hope we don't have one of those. I mean, usually, first week of the playoffs at home is not really when that's going to happen to you, but, hard to say.
First match is very, very important of the chest pounding and the dancing and the trying to rub the nose, Steelers JV team's nose and shit a little bit. See, that's the type of stuff that's remembered. It's kind of like a college football coach saying the team he's playing that week is the 11th best team in the country.
Yeah. Yes, that sticks in the craw a little, as Myron Cope would say. Jeremy, one last question on this side of the ball before we flip over and talk about the Steelers offense a little bit. To my eye, Tyson Alualu is not playing as well as he did before the injury. I'm wondering if you noted that as well. I just feel like he is not really the same guy he was early in the season. And could that be exploited?
Well, I don't think he looks as explosive as he used to be. I think I've noticed that, a little bit with him and rushing the passer situations. I actually think Stephon Tuitt has actually taken over that role to a degree. You've seen Tuitt out there in more pass rushing situations the past few weeks because of that. I haven't noticed it as much against the run, just because they've been giving him some rest. Carlos Davis came in and had that good game 2 weeks ago against Indianapolis. But yeah, I've noticed it just from a pass rushing standpoint, because it used to be like he was like the fourth guy you weren't trying to block when it came to Steelers pass rushers, and then he'd find a way to sneak in there and come up with like an impressive sack. But I haven't seen that recently.
Well, and in the first Browns matchup of the year, that was the game where the Steelers rushed 5, and they got one-on-one matchups, so, with everybody blocking. And Alualu really was amazing in that game, I thought, in terms of, rushing the passer at a degree or at a level that was, different than what he was doing before that. I lied. One more question on this side, Perch. Joe Hayden doesn't go in this game. We saw a little bit of Cam Sutton do it last week. What was your take on Sutton's performance? Do you think that, the Steelers can handle that drop off a little bit from Joe Hayden?
Yeah, I've been the leader of the Cam Sutton fan club here most of the year, and the thing I like about him is he's aggressive and he'll gamble a little bit, and he's a guy that can come up with some splash plays and some turnovers. But even when he's not, he gives good coverage. I mean, he's a younger guy. I mean, to me, with the cap held the Steelers are in at the end of the season, and Joe Hayden's probably got a year or two left in the league. Boy, they may even want to look at getting rid of Hayden and trying to keep both of the two young corners and just, looking at it for 3 or 4 years down the line. That might be the smarter play. But, I have a lot of faith in Sutton. If Hayden had to miss a week, either playing Baltimore or Cleveland was probably the best week for him to miss in the playoffs, and getting back next week when we have to play somebody who actually throws the ball at a competent level.
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's great. Even if Sutton still plays a lot of snaps against the next opponent, just having more guys and more depth, none of that hurts for sure.
Biggest problem with Joe Hayden is that means Justin Lane sees more time on defense, and he looks lost a lot.
No, he hasn't played so well. I mean, I was really surprised that they didn't put James Pierre into the game until kind of partway through the fourth quarter. But I thought that Pierre was a guy that would have been a game for me to see some more snaps from him. I would have played him at least a third of the game just to see what you got, because he's shown more in terms of coverage skills than Justin Lane did. Justin Lane is more of a project guy, and Pierre was more of a polished guy from a small school. So at any rate, that's my going into next year, if you do have the young corner situation and you're going to ditch one or more of the veteran corners, then that's a guy that I would expect to challenge for a job. Anyway, this is what I think. Let's move over to the other side of the ball. I'm going to start with you, Jeremy. I saw the Ben Roethlisberger press conference this week, and I've heard a lot of there's been a lot of chatter about predictably about the Browns and how they're going to they're the team of destiny compared to the Steelers, and the idea that Baker Mayfield is an ascending quarterback and that Ben is a descending quarterback. I think that was Max Kellerman that said that this week. I got the impression watching Ben's press conference that he is taking all of that in and is locked and loaded for this week. I'm wondering if you have the sense that he is about ready to kind of go off on the Browns this weekend.
Yeah, it's kind of the same sense, a few years ago when he said something along the lines of, "Oh, I'm not playing good enough. Maybe I shouldn't be playing in the NFL anymore." It's kind of the same vibe, where it's like, "Oh, I'm going to," when he said, "Oh, I'm going to treat this like this could be my last playoff game." It kind of the same narrative there. It's just, you could tell, it's brewing underneath that he wants to come out and just totally go off on someone, just like you said.
Yeah.
Just like you said, it's always like, please haters doubt me and I'm going to prove you wrong. And that's kind of the mantra that Big Ben always kind of thrives on, whether, he's injured, people are like, "Oh, well, Big Ben's injured." Then he comes out and plays like one of the best 10 career games of his life. That's just the type of player Ben is. It's almost like he needs extra motivation sometimes just to like really go out and just destroy someone. So hopefully that's the Ben Roethlisberger we get this week.
Yeah. So FC, here's some numbers for you, because I know how much you love stats.
I love them.
Ben, the last 5 years in the playoffs, he's 3-3, but he's fourth in playoff games played, fifth in wins, sixth in completion percentage, fourth in yards, sixth in yards per attempt. Actually, basically his numbers are a little bit better than Tom Brady's and Drew Brees and the like. But two of the three losses, he played the number one defense that year, and the third was the number one scoring defense in New England without any receivers, basically. But just you put his numbers together, it's like, he had a 107 quarterback rating, 8.76 yards per attempt at home. These last two games, he's been outstanding. I think there's, I remember some talk about how Ben hadn't really done anything lately in the playoffs, and I kind of feel like he's the one guy that hasn't let them down really over the last couple of years.
I mean, all that's true. There's two constants since I've been at Steeler Fury. Two constants. Number one, I smoke pot. Number two, I hate the fucking media. Those two things have been absolute constants. I could have a big careful head. I could have gone bald like I am now. I fucking hate the media. It's true. Ben Roethlisberger is descending. Tom Brady is descending. They are not as good as they once were. There are two first ballot Hall of Famers. They're two of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. They're not making music. They're not making art. They're not getting better with age. They're not, their skills are eroding, not getting greater. So yes, Ben is descending. Is he descending in the same atmosphere as Baker fucking Mayfield? No. So it's just the media stirring up shit, trying to. And the good thing is Ben takes the bait. So yes, I agree with you. Ben's going to be locked and loaded. You're going to see probably more John Wayne, Ben, second half of the Colts games where he's only going to take a few shots. He's going to hold on to the ball. We're going to make plays. I really, truly believe that.
Yeah, it feels like it. And Perch, my favorite quote from that press conference, just to touch on that one last time, is they asked Ben about what he thought about the Josh Jobs, getting some snaps and maybe coming in for a quarterback sneak or whatever. And Ben was, first of all, he was like, "Hey, I'm into winning. Whatever it takes to win, I'm totally into it." But then he said, "The great thing is we have three options to could start the game. So I'm not really sure who's going to start, and it's great that nobody knows."
Yeah, I didn't hear that. I don't think I watched the whole thing, but on that whole topic, I'll just say this: if not now, when? I mean, that's what's got to be going through Ben's head. And it keep likening his career back to Elway when, Ben played it safe a lot this year. We didn't want to take the hits, where he didn't want to hold the ball and throw it downfield until he absolutely had to again the Colts game. I think we're going to see gunslinger, bring out the gray Ben again here for the playoffs. I think you're going to see him take hits. I think you're going to see him scramble. I think you're going to see him hold the ball. You're going to see him roll out of the pocket. You're going to see him throw down the field. You're going to see him want to write his legacy the way that the way that he came in, not the way he's been neutered and had to play the last couple of years. So that's the big thing, because, after this year, they're going to lose a lot on offense. They're going to lose some on defense. They're going to be really tight up against it in the cap. Who knows how Ben's knees and everything are going to hold up another year. And next year might be his last year. They've got a really tough schedule. This might be his last go around in the playoffs. You never know. So I think he's got to be saying, you know what? I'm pretty healthy right now. I'm very motivated. I want to. The same thing with his second year when he wanted to win one for Bus. He's got to want to win one for Pouncey. I think you're going to see Ben just, at the top of his game for the next couple of weeks.
Yeah.
And then, not to interject, we've seen good Steelers teams miss the playoffs the last few years. It's not a given that you get in every year. Yeah, this is a great year because there's a seventh team getting in. Or, the Steelers could have really benefited from that the past few years. But he's had really good teams that haven't found a way into the playoffs. So there is some degree, like Perch said, of urgency here, because you never know. You might have another great team next year and still not get in.
Yep. It's always a possibility. There's no guarantees. Even when you've got a great quarterback and you got a solid team, guys get injured, stuff goes wrong. The schedule next year is absolutely brutal. If this indeed, let's just imagine Steelers win the Super Bowl, Ben decides to call it a career, the Steelers decide to let their free agents go, and try to rebuild through the draft. They got a good chance of having a top 10 pick, in 2022. That's the kind of schedule they have coming up. But we get ahead of ourselves a little bit in that regard. Jeremy, I'll just go back to you for a second. So there's been some talk about Deshaun Watson moving to another team, and there are a lot of people who were saying that they would take Deshaun Watson regardless of whether Ben is interested in retiring or this is his last year, whatever. They would still take him. So I'm going to ask you this very specifically. If you had to bet your life savings on the Steelers to win the Super Bowl in 2021, like this right now, if Deshaun Watson were the quarterback on one bet and Ben Roethlisberger were the quarterback on another bet, which one would you put your money on?
Ooh, that's tough. Honestly, I'd put my money on Deshaun just because he can do so much with his legs, and that's such a key part on defenses now that when you try to defend these dual threat guys, and if you look at the type of year Deshaun Watson had with no true number one receiver, I think he leads the league in passing yards. He's completing close to 70% of his throws this year. I mean, if Houston was a good team this year and had a good record like 12-4, he'd be the clear-cut runner for MVP. But he's on a really bad team right now. So with a guy like Deshaun Watson, where I think the best of his career is still ahead of him, I'd take Deshaun Watson.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm not holding this year against him at all. As a matter of fact, not having the clear number one target wide receiver is always good for a quarterback because they spread the ball around more. They throw it to the open guy. They don't force it. He didn't throw as many bad interceptions this year, but he's had that propensity for throwing interceptions at very inopportune times late in games. And he did have one year where he had the number one defense in the league and went one and done in the playoffs. I'm just not convinced. I mean, some guys are, really good players, really good quarterbacks who are just, they're missing that piece that, Ben has in spades. And I'm not saying Deshaun Watson is not clutch or, not good or whatever, but I'm not sure I make that deal, especially knowing that you got a couple of years left of Ben where he's still playing pretty good football. But, guys, who knows how it translates to what they ask him to do here. So even if you add a quarterback into Pittsburgh that you think is a better talent, do they fit? Are they going to jibe with what the team wants to do, the organization, the head coach, and so on and so forth?
I will say that with the way the Steelers are currently set up, I should have taken Ben Roethlisberger because Ben Roethlisberger will at least say, screw it, I'm going to call all my own plays. I'm not sure Deshaun Watson's going to do that initially or whatnot. So, I mean, at least Ben has been doing it for so long to where it's like he knows what it's going to take. He can go out there and direct an offense. Maybe Deshaun Watson can't do that at this point in his career. was more making it on just like, if Deshaun Watson is not happy in Houston, and if he could be the heir apparent to Big Ben, I'd definitely roll the dice on that.
No, sure. FC, Chase Claypool kind of the last couple of games, starting with the second half in Indianapolis, really suddenly back to the point of being a focal point on offense. Do you think that's a portends for what's about to come in terms of what they'll do in the playoffs with him? Or do you think it'll go back to just being whoever's open gets the football and we're not so much, nobody's the number one?
Both. And I'll explain quickly. The Steelers have 3 number 1 wide receivers. I mean, it's Juju Smith-Schuster, Deontay Johnson, and Chase Claypool are as good as it gets for a trio in the NFL. I'll argue. I think that the Steelers' play calling and quarterback plays could be more aggressive, which benefits Chase Claypool at times because he's a vertical route runner. He's a vertical play guy. It's a lower percentage throw than Deontay Johnson or to Juju Schuster for the most part. But Chase Claypool is one of the keys, if not outside of Ben, the key to the Steelers offense. Because if you have to, the safeties have to split the field and have to be 18 yards off the ball, I guarantee you the Steelers can get a semblance of a running game. Everything builds off of the other in football. And that's why play calling and play design is so important.
It's a nice thing to have a variety of guys to go to who have different styles. And, that's the thing they've been their best years the Steelers have had in their offenses when they have a diversity in receivers. And in this case, they're not only diverse and different from one another, but they also can do some similar things. They're all, pretty good with the ball in their hands, running it. And, they've all threatened at least deep intermediate, if not deep with the football. So I interpret this as being a good thing. First, of course, the part that's not a good thing is the stable of running backs and the lack, what they're lacking. But rather than just focus on what they're lacking, I guess the question I'm going to pose to you is, what can they do? You're a coach. You're like, okay, I have these running backs and I'm stuck with them. Let's focus on what they can do and give them opportunities to do what they can do well. What would you say that is going into this game?
Decoy. Yeah, that's pretty much where I'm going with it. Is you run them just enough that the other team thinks that, hey, they might run these assholes a little bit, and then you work in your a couple of play actions, you work in your short passing game, you work in your long passing game. You run them just enough. You mix them in the passing game a little bit on some screens and things, but that's pretty much what they are. I mean, they're a decoy to make you think that the Steelers might actually try and work those guys into the game plan.
Yeah, I mean, I'll say this. I think James Conner can give you a few good effort runs. That isn't, he isn't the absolute worst. He's not as bad as the other guys running the football. But more importantly, in the passing game, James Conner's uniquely positioned. He's a useful blocker, but he has a really good sense of that late, I'm going to chip a guy or see if I need to stay in to block, but if I get an opportunity, I'm going to leak. But he doesn't take too long to do it, and he has good sense of when to do it to not abandon the ship. And he looks for the ball right away. Like he's gotten the feel of that really down pat with Ben. And when they have like they did in the second half of the Indianapolis game, when they start threatening the intermediate and the deeper stuff, man, there's tons of room for James Conner underneath. So to me, that is one thing that they can do. That isn't necessarily running per se, but having the threat of James Conner running at least opens that up to you. Jeremy, what would you say the Steelers not should, but what will they attempt to do with the running game against Cleveland? Because, I mean, before you answer, because Cleveland's defense, not so good against a run.
I was about to say, I think they're going to try to run the ball. I know Perch said, use it as a decoy. That's probably what I do too, but it's what are the Pittsburgh Steelers going to do? Something tells me they're going to try to make this a physical game on the inside at least. and see if they can't get at least some of the pressure off Ben Roethlisberger in the passing game. You know, the offense worked really well in the second half against Indianapolis, but that's the last time we've seen it really click. So, I mean, I'd like to see some pressure taken off Ben Roethlisberger in the passing game, even if, like Perch said, it's just to present the element where we could throw some play action at you or involve James Conner in the passing game.
Yeah, and I mean, FC, the thing about the run game is, you know, I don't know if they're being truthful or they're, you know, kind of there's some shenanigans going on, but Matt Filer is supposed to return, and the word from, I think it was DeCastro that was quoted, that said that, you know, confirmed that Filer is back at practice and playing left guard. So
Right.
Are they going to actually take Dotson out of the game, out of the lineup, and replace him with Filer? And what do you think about that?
I don't necessarily agree with it, but I also don't agree with the idea that if Filer's healthy, I don't necessarily agree that he should lose his job. Now, if he goes in there and he stinks or if he doesn't play well, I put his ass on the bench. You have to. You know, it is what it is. I mean, I really like a lot of things that Dotson brings to the Steelers' offensive line. He's a large lad. He's technically sound. He's very aggressive. He's mobile. He gets moving at the point of attack. He's everything that I look for in an NFL offensive guard, and I think that he's going to be a very good player. Back to the Steelers' run game. I think ideally, in the Steelers' mind, they run the ball 32 times this week. That would be ideal. Mike Tomlin, you tell Mike Tomlin, hey, we're going to run the ball 32 times and we're going to run it for 130 yards, he'd be thrilled.
Yeah. I mean, and certainly, you know, to take some, you know, get some momentum running the football before you move on and, you know, in the playoffs, hopefully. That seems like it would be a useful thing to do for sure. So Jeremy, you know, when you put together these elements that the Steelers, you know, are still trying to revive this run game and still, you know, committed to sticking with it, especially against a team like to slow down a pass rush for, you know, a guy like Myles Garrett, and seems to help in that regard. The one element that you know, has been hit or miss this year for the Steelers are the tight ends. The tight ends have, at times, Eric Ebron has made some nice catches and been a big part of the offense. At times, the blocking of everyone who's played the tight end position has not particularly been good. Yeah, just trying to see, you know, just will this offense come together and play better, the same, or worse in the playoffs? What is your sense of, you put all the pieces together and you see where they're headed going forward? So it's not just the quarterback, it's not just the receivers, the running game, the offensive line, tight ends. It's everybody. Is it, you know, are they sort of just who they are, stock up or stock down?
I'd say their stock is on the rise. You know, we've had that 3-game skid where it seemed like they tried everything, nothing was working, you know, to develop true continuity. I think there's nowhere to go but up from there. You know, we saw the second half of the Colts game. You know, I think that's the offense we need to strive to be every down we go out there on offense. You know, I would have to think it's on the rise. And now that there's a sense of urgency, knowing, you know, that every game you play could be your last game. You know, it's not, oh, let's just limp to the end of the season because we know we're in the playoffs. You know, I felt like that could have crept into some of these guys' mind, you know, when they're going through the skid. And, you know, we'd already locked up a playoff seed in week 14, I think it was. Or you know, at least clinch something for the playoffs. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, you know, there's a sense of urgency now. Big Ben's came out and said it. You know, I'm hoping he's lit a fire under everyone's ass. Yeah. You know, where it's like, guys, you know, Sunday could be our last game. Let's make sure it's not.
Yeah. Perch, despite the Steelers, you know, having some experienced players, it feels like there's a lot of guys who are big contributors who have never played in a playoff game. Juju, you know, has only played in one playoff game. like the one against Jacksonville, and I'm not even sure he played that much in that game. I'm wondering if you think it'll have an impact. I know they're playing against a team where they also don't have a lot of playoff experience, but I'm wondering, who are the guys you expect to blossom in playoff football that are young guys for the Steelers?
I think the mentally strong guys, the confident guys. I think like Minkah Fitzpatrick, I could see him being pretty amped up. It would have been a game for like an older guy like Joe Hayden who hasn't have playoff success. He played for the Browns all those years. That you kind of feel bad for him for missing the game, but you hope that those young receivers, those are the ones that I worry about, trying to do too much, dropping a pass, fumbling a ball, something like that. You hope that they make a couple plays early and get involved and get any sort of nerves. Without any fan, there's going to be friends and family only, like 2,000 fans in the stands for this game. So, that shouldn't be much of a factor. That's something we really haven't talked about much this season, how much better our offense has been on the road than it has been the last couple of years because there's no fans and Ben can communicate and all that stuff. So
sure.
That's going to be a little bit of a factor in the playoffs too, that, it's going to be silent stadiums for the most part. And, but we do have a lot of veteran players who, defense especially. On the offensive side, you just got to watch and see. You never know how those guys are going to react until, they start facing the live bullets.
Sure. And Perch, I'll throw a number at you. This is I think the first time in NFL history that road teams actually won more than home teams. It was 128. Visiting teams were 128, 127, and 1 this year against home teams, which is usually home teams have a significant advantage. So that's pretty good. FC, I'm going to give you the last word on this, and I just want to talk about the kicking situation for the Steelers. Chris Boswell had a full practice today, had a week off, but this is the second time this year that he's missed with, I guess it's some kind of combination of hip and leg issue. But I guess the more specific question is, do you think it will impact what the Steelers do when they are in opponent's territory, but not necessarily in easy field goal range? In other words, they're more likely to go for it when they're on the opponent's side of the field, too close for a punt.
I don't think it'll have much effect. If Boswell can't go, what ended up happening with Matthew Wright, I know that he wasn't eligible to go back to the practice squad or something like that because he was activated twice. Here's some weird rule. But if Boswell can't kick, and we'll add Matthew Wright or another kicker and have to deactivate Boswell. I'm more concerned about the punting game. I'm more concerned about the coverage units. If the Steelers in this game are kicking field goals or worried about field goals, got to kick a field goal to win the game at the end, we're fucked. So if the game didn't go as planned, and we're going to probably not have too many more of these podcasts this season.
Yeah. So
I'll quickly answer your question to Perch. Tyson Alualu, Cameron Hayward, Stephen Tuitt, Vince Williams, Marquise Pouncey, all these guys, City of Champions, Steelers, Ben showing rings, Tomlin talking about rings. These guys have had zero playoff success. Pouncey had a little bit as a rookie, but that's it.
Yeah, it's a big deal to those guys, I'm sure. Speaking of it being a big deal, it's a big deal. We're gonna predict the outcome of this game for the four of us in just a minute. But first, it's time for our Around the League pick segment, brought to us by
Sportsmanship. Mike Pereira, always a beauty. Oh, how he has a jaw, I'll never know. And John Perry, and I'm going to be serious. John Perry, for the third time this year, basically said, the Reds fucked up. And I couldn't believe that one of their own threw another one under the bus. So, John Perry, you're a good guy.
I think, it's like it's like players and in this case, officials, when they first get out of the league and they're into the booth, they know those guys and they're still part of that community and whatever. But, a couple of years of paychecks and not hanging around the locker rooms and whatever, and suddenly it's easier to be honest about things. But yeah, it's a little tough to be that guy who has to toe the party line up in the booth and not say anything bad about the guys you're covering because you're worried about offending somebody or whatever. So yeah, I do give him a break for that. I mean, I do give him credit for that. let's quickly go around. I don't think we need to spend a lot of time like analyzing a bunch of games, but let's weigh in on them. I'll start with the Los Angeles Rams at the Seattle Seahawks. The Rams are a 3.5-point underdog, so Seattle is favored. Still not really 100% sure who's going to start the game, but I guess Jared Goff looked fine throwing the ball, so I'm going to be a little bit surprised if he doesn't play. Quickly, Perch, what would you say happens in this game?
Well, I would have made a beating Goff joke here, but I'm not sure how healthy the guy is and whether he's going to play or not. So, Seattle's defense, I didn't think much of all year. They came on a little bit late in the year. I kind of want to root against them. I kind of want to root for Aaron Donald and the Rams, but I think Seattle prevails and wins this week. So I'm going to go, Seattle 24-20.
Jeremy, what'd you think?
Both of the matchups this year have been low-scoring affairs. I think Perch is right on with the low score. I do think Seattle just has a little bit more, especially if Goff doesn't play. I think that's a tough hurdle to overcome. I'll go 23-17, Seattle.
Yeah, FC?
DK Metcalf has 180-yard receiving game in the last 8 games. I will take the Rams with a monumental upset, 21-17.
Yeah, nice. By the way, I got to give credit to Jared Goff. He dislocated his thumb and put it back in between plays.
Yep.
I mean, never. I mean, it's one thing to call a guy soft, but you can't really call a guy soft who replaced his own dislocated thumb. That's next level. So, anyway, chapeau to him. I'm going to take the Rams in a bit of an upset. I think Seattle is just not quite right this year, and I do agree with FC that that's sort of a red flag a little bit about DK Metcalf, and more importantly, DK Metcalf matched up with the Rams has struggled a little bit with the Rams cornerback Jalen Ramsey, right? So that's one guy that can actually play DK Metcalf a little bit, take him away, and I think left without that, Russ Wilson has gotten kind of, he gets kind of crazy with the football when he can't get it where he wants to get it. And the offensive line is, not blocking guys. So anyway, take the Rams. Indianapolis Colts at the Buffalo Bills. I'll start. The Bills are a 6.5-point favorite. Buffalo is sort of everybody's darling right now. They're on a hot streak. Fans and analysts love teams that are on a hot streak. They don't necessarily care who they beat in the hot streak or what contributed to the hot streak. But it's like if your quarterback is putting up fantasy numbers and your team is winning games, everybody pretty much will pick you to win all the time. I do think the Bills will win this game and cover the 6.5 points, but it wouldn't surprise me if the Bills throw up a clunker win in this game, or perhaps at some point in the playoffs throw up a clunker that results in a loss. I'm just not convinced that they're on this kind of roll where they're not going to stop till they win the Super Bowl. Heard a lot of Super Bowl talk for the Bills this week in New York City. P.S. I'll go to you, Dom. What's your take? Bills and Colts.
The Bills will lose, just not this week. Phillip Rivers, Western New York. I understand the weather is supposed to be decent. It's still going to be windy. Jonathan Taylor's a hell of a back, and Sheem Hines is a hell of a back. I just don't think Phillip Rivers can make enough plays. I think the Bills are going to win probably 27-17.
Gotcha. Perch?
If not now, when? Phillip Rivers has never really had a deep run in the playoff. I mean, what do you make? One AFC championship game in his whole career, and you got to think he's got to be looking. This might be his last game ever if he loses. I think he's considering retirement after the year, and Buffalo's looked like the best team in the league for the past month, probably. But that Colts, he's got a good defense. Defense travels, and Rivers is still got, he's a gunslinger with enough bullets left in the gun that he can make some plays and win it. I just, if I had to bet it, Buffalo just has too much, so I'm going to say Bills win. I don't think they'll cover though. I'm going to go a lower scoring game, like 24-20 Buffalo, game that's won in the last couple plays.
Nice. Bills to win, Colts to cover, and take the under, ladies and gentlemen. Jeremy, you're a resident Indianapolis Colts expert, being that you have to hear about them nonstop most days. What's your take on this?
Well, the Colts are going to want to bring their physical brand of football to Buffalo, and I think that will travel. One thing they've done well is they've run the ball and they've played good defense. That wins a lot of games. I just don't think it'll win this one. I think they fall 27-21. Just Josh Allen's playing on an unreal level. And the Colts really haven't been able to get after the pass rusher like they'd want to. I feel like if they would have better success rushing the passer, they could win this game. But the Bills have just been playing so well right now.
Yeah, like I said, they're hot. And, I mean, you could actually make it would be reasonable to say Josh Allen is one of the top candidates. Maybe he's not going to win, but one of the top candidates for the league's MVP. Has been pretty good on a really good team. Just some other guys, higher profile and better chance to win, and who also played really well. I think also the Colts, I want to say the last time that they played Buffalo held them down a little bit for scoring, but I'm not sure. I think that might have been last year that Eberflus put up a good plan for them against Buffalo. Let's move on to Tampa Bay Buccaneers against the team with the losing record, the Washington football team, who looked like they didn't even look like they were going to win against Philadelphia last week until Philadelphia handed the game to them. I'll start with you, Jeremy. What do you think happens in this game? The Bucs are currently an 8-point favorite.
I think Tampa Bay wins this. Tom Brady is, captain playoff. He's got as many playoff wins as anyone, if not the record at this point. He's got a lot of weapons. The defense plays pretty well overall. I think it's just a little too much for the Washington offense to overcome at this point, this late in the year. Alex Smith he's nice as a game manager, but I don't think he's a guy that's going to go out and win you a lot of games. And I think in the playoffs, you have to have quarterbacks to go out and win ball games.
Yeah, Perch?
Well, to clarify his point, Tom Brady has exactly as many playoff wins as number 2 and number 3 all-time combined. 30 playoff wins versus 16 for Montana and 14 for the guys tied behind him. So, yeah, it's just his playoff stats are ridiculous. But the PC Redskins last week did everything they possibly could to lose to an Eagles team that was trying to lose the game to get better draft positions. So, as much as I want to say that a team with a really good defense has a puncher's chance, they really do. Brady and that offense, and they got Antonio Brown looked alive last week for the first time this year. Last couple of weeks. So, I think that the Bucs probably win that game by 17, 20 points. I'll say something like 30 to 13.
Yoy, FC, what you think?
Riverboat Ron. Chase Young, Jonathan Allen, Josh Sweat, Ryan Kerrigan. I can always forget the other defensive tackle from Alabama that starts there. He's very good. Tampa Bay's offensive line is not very good. Despite what people think, they're not very good. I think they're going to win, and I think they're going to win handily. 17 points. I think they're going to win 30. You know what? They're going to win 27-6.
Wait, I'm sorry. Who's going to win?
If Washington pummels Tom Brady in this game.
Well, you stole my thunder a little bit. By the way, Daron Payne is the guy you were trying to think of. I've been convinced since this matchup was announced that Washington was going to win this game, and I'll tell you the two main reasons are both of the teams previous to this, who are NFL teams who went through a full season and ended up with a losing record and then hosting a playoff game. Both of them won their first round playoff game. The one you might remember was the Seattle game with Marshawn Lynch going crazy against New Orleans and shutting down Jimmy Graham and the machine that New Orleans had going at that time. I just feel like Tampa Bay has kind of coasted into this spot a little bit. Yes, they've come to life with some of those, Antonio Brown and some of the stuff going on. Rob Gronkowski looks like he's back to the form that we expected him to have. And, Brady, for his part, has played pretty well. But this matchup with the front line of Tampa Bay and the front seven for Washington is just horrendous. It's just, they have a stationary quarterback who doesn't really move out of the pocket and is not looking to extend the plays at all, trying to get the ball downfield to his guys. And you have, maybe the best young pass rushing front in the league in Washington. And I just feel like, they have something to prove. They didn't play well at all last week, but they're 5-1 with Alex Smith this year. And Alex Smith doesn't have to be great with a defense like that. If the defense is dominating up front and Alex Smith is good, they have a chance to win this game. At the very least, I'm taking Washington in the 8 points. I think it'll be that close.
Atlanta, Detroit, Carolina, Atlanta. Last 4 teams that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers faced.
Yeah, so that'll make you look a little bit better. That'll prop you up a little. Quickly, Baltimore Ravens and Tennessee Titans. I'll start. Baltimore is a 3.5 point favorite. I know Tennessee sort of has Baltimore's number kind of, and Baltimore Ravens have never won a playoff game with Lamar Jackson. But I think the Ravens are going to win this game. The Titans on defense this year have not been the same sort of special team on defense that they were last year. But this is a nail biter, probably the closest and most entertaining game of the weekend. But I'll take the Ravens. Jeremy, how about you?
Yeah, the narrative that Lamar Jackson can't win a playoff game gets erased this week. Like you said, that Tennessee defense has just been porous. It doesn't matter who they play; they give up just points after points. It doesn't matter how well Derrick Henry can run; it's because they can't stop anyone. I'll take the Ravens here, probably only by a score though, because the Titans have found a way to do things on offense. I'll take the Ravens 34-27.
Yeah, there you go. Kurt, how about you?
It's 30-27. I've seen the last couple games these teams have played. Tennessee is dynamic on offense. It's not just Derrick Henry. They can really move the ball. They've got a quarterback who can run it. They can throw it. They've got a couple of really good receivers, a good tight end. And I think that enough teams have seen enough of Lamar Jackson where if you can kind of slow down the Baltimore running game, you can get him confused and force him to some mistakes in the passing game. I just think that Titans at home, wanting to try to avenge the falling a little bit short last year, I think Tennessee gets it done to close high-scoring game, 30-27 Titans.
Yeah, I mean, I actually love Tennessee's offense. I think their offense is not good. It's great. It's just their defense is, that's the part. If they can, like you said, if they can figure out what everybody else is doing to slow down Baltimore and execute it, then maybe. Dom, what'd you say?
Pressure busts pipes. In the Baltimore-Tennessee game last year, Baltimore had higher time of possession, more rush yards, more total yards. They also have a quarterback that has a 3-to-1 ratio in his career in the playoffs and has 3 turnovers for every touchdown created. Can't put my money on that. I will take the Tennessee Titans to win this game 27-24.
Wow, yeah, there you go. Okay, one last one. I'll go right back to UFC. The Bears and Saints. New Orleans is a 10-point favorite against the Bears. Speaking of teams that are on a hot streak, kind of really would not have expected the Bears to make the playoffs a month ago. And is this maybe their token appearance against the Saints? What do you say, FC?
27-24 Saints. I don't buy into Drew Brees, but I do buy into a healthy Michael Thomas. I think he gets his first touchdown on the season this week.
How crazy is that?
Fantastic. What's that?
How crazy is that? That's all I was saying.
Michael Thomas hasn't scored a touchdown this year. Crazy. But yeah, Mitch Trubisky has really been solid for the past month. But I think the Saints are going to sneak it out with the offense.
Oh, is that a Taysom Hill kind of reference? I like that. Pretty good. Perch, what do you say, Perch?
Bears suck. Saints 30-0.
Jeremy, what do you say?
First, a shout out to Mitchell Trubisky. You won me my fantasy playoffs this year. Don't think you're going to win this. Hey, when Dak Prescott goes down in week 5, you struggle for the rest of the year. I don't think the Bears have enough. I think the Saints will start to dial up the pressure. Trubisky's had a solid month. I think he's going to see a lot more pressure this week. I do think it's a very close game, though. Saints eke it out 28-21.
I think it's going to be surprisingly close for the early part of the game, but at some point I expect New Orleans to pull away and win by more than 10. So, sorry, Mark Shepard, our Chicago friend at SteelerFury.com. Because but even he, I was like, "Are you excited about the Bears being in the playoffs?" And he was like, "Meh." So I think they're at that stage where they kind of really would like to have a better draft pick, but like when you don't really feel like you have a shot to win it all, it's tough to be in the playoffs. It's tough to be a fan of that team. And speaking of which, winning it all and being in the playoffs and having your team in the playoffs, that brings us to our 5-star matchup this week. It's a pretty good matchup. It's your Pittsburgh Steelers against what's left of the Cleveland Browns for the wild card playoff game at Heinz Field with 2,000 close friends and family, and the rest of us close friends and family watching from afar. I will go. I'm not going to go first. I'm going to send it to Jeremy Coleman, who's going to tell us what he thinks is going to happen in this week's Browns-Steelers matchup.
If Mason Rudolph can pass on the Browns defense, Ben Roethlisberger will tear it to shreds. I'm going to go 33-17 Pittsburgh.
That's a concise, succinct. I like it. Dom, what do you have to say?
Wrote an article, 3117. Go read it.
There you go. SteelerFury.com. That's where to find your article. Look for the author, FC, like the letters, F and C. And
no, actually, EFCEE, because I couldn't go with 2 fucking letters at the website.
But on the front page, you still got FC.
Thank you.
Your back. I got your back, dude. And what say you, Steel Perch, about this week's Steelers-Browns matchup?
Well, it's a legacy game for Ben Roethlisberger. One more playoff win. He ties none other than Terry Bradshaw for third place all time on the all-time playoff win list. He is, I think, extremely motivated. I think he's healthy. I think he's ready to go. I think that the team the franchise has done everything they can to protect him and keep him upright and healthy for the playoffs for the last couple of years, and now he's finally there and ready to go. And they're playing the Browns, who may as well change their last name to the Roethlisbergers because he has completely owned them his entire career. And not only that, the Steelers have owned the Browns. So we talked a little bit about the playoffs earlier. I kind of looked it up since we've been on here. Back in 1995, January 1st, the Cleveland Browns won their very last playoff game. The very next week, they lost to Pittsburgh Steelers. 8 years later, the Browns make the playoffs again. They lost to the Pittsburgh Steelers. And here we go. 18 years later, who are they playing? Pittsburgh Steelers. It could be the hat trick. Knock them out of the playoffs 3 straight times over the course of 26 years. In the course of that 26 years, you know how many games the Steelers have played in the playoffs? 33. So, what year were the Steelers founded? 1933.
Rolling Rock, lined up. Rolling Rock, my friend.
I got it all. It's all lined up. I can't see any way. Like I said, if they lost this game, it would be the single most horrendous loss in the Steelers franchise playoff history. I don't see it happening. I'm going Steelers 28, Browns 19.
I thought you were going to say 28-27 like you're... Come on, Perch. We expect better out of you.
Hold on. 28-19, a Steelers landslide.
Nice. I it's like I've been up and down with this team. There were times where I was just cautiously optimistic and thinking, all right, like they're on a roll and they're starting to win those close games again, and they got something special going on. When Bud Dupree got hurt and they went to that stretch where they just looked dead, I wondered if that was the end and so on and so forth. But I don't know, like for some reason, I'm just feeling it right now. Like I haven't felt it like this about this team in a long time. And I just, the pieces are there, and they had major injuries on defense, but they've also replaced it with 2 guys that are at least more competent than an inside linebacker, Sean Spence, getting off his couch and coming to start in the AFC Championship game. So I think they've covered themselves better with the roster depth. The young guys are kind of coming on, and I just feel like, you have this quarterback who has a propensity for winning these kinds of games, playoff games against tough opponents, games when the chips are down and nobody, when the whole world thinks that you don't have it anymore. I've learned enough about the guy to not second guess his ability to carry a team, to play great, even at this age and even in this season. And I just, for some reason, I just feel like the team is being led to the promised land right now. And I don't know if they're going to get there, but I think they're about to go on a ride in the postseason that I hope lasts a little while. So I'm going to go Steelers 30-16 in this game. I think the Browns may move it a little bit between the 20s, but they're going to have a hard time penetrating this defense down the red zone the way that the Browns have been accustomed to doing with their run game. And I feel like the Steelers offense is going to have its way to dictate a little bit to the Browns. And that will probably mean running the football a lot, which might keep the score down a little to just 30. But I think they're going to hit that magical 30 mark against the Browns this week. Time for last words, gentlemen, before this week's playoff matchup. Jeremy, what do you got to say for yourself?
I don't know what's happening in Philadelphia right now. That was just such a shit show in the fourth quarter. I think that just speaks to a terrible culture where you have all these players out there that want to win a game. But let's just throw in Nate Sudfeld for the hell of it and evaluate our third-string quarterback when I'd be wanting to evaluate the second-string quarterback who is going to potentially replace Carson Wentz. But no. Let's get a higher draft pick and evaluate our third-string quarterback. I don't think that made much sense.
Yeah, and I think that has a way of biting you in the ass when it's done because you end the season on a high note. Your quarterback that you're thinking is going to have, you're going to see what he's made of next year. Maybe he comes back and wins that game and feels good about himself. The team feels good about it, and it's just bad news. Perch, what say you for your last word?
Well, we hate to say it, but we're starting to wind down the end of this era. The Ben Roethlisberger era, and just be appreciative. We've got a playoff game, got a home playoff game, and a game we're favored in, and let's hope that this is the time that he's able to put together another run and get that third ring that I think that he probably wants more than anybody. And if not, hey, let's just enjoy it and appreciate the run that we've been on. Like I said, the Steelers have played 33 playoff games since '95. The Browns have played one. So you look just across the turnpike and see what the other half lives like. And we've been pretty spoiled here for a long time. So let's hope that this is the beginning of another great run.
FC, how about you for your last word?
I'm going to be almost 50 years old, and I have absolutely no doubt the old degenerate, grumpy, mean, drug-filled is going to be out again this week. Saturday, playoffs, NFL playoffs. Sunday, NFL playoffs. Monday, college football national championship. Tuesday, Penguins opener against the Flyers on TV.
Wednesday, divorce. Sorry, FC, I preempted you, but that sounds like a pretty good weekend for FC.
It's going to be a pretty interesting week, and for the old FC, hopefully he doesn't end up divorced because his old lady's a pretty good divorce attorney. He's going to end up fucking that ass. Yeah,
this is not something you really want to find out, FC. You better toe the line for sure. I'll just say this, aside from echoing what everyone has just said, and especially Perch with that, appreciate this era now. I just feel like, you're gonna look back, and no matter, even if you get your Deshaun Watson dreams come true, and they bring somebody like that in when Ben is gone, guy plays the game in a really special way that I think it's one of those things you just got to hang on to and say you're going to remember what you're seeing now and not just forget about it 5 years from now, because it's a special era. However far it goes and however many more times the guy wins games that matter, I think you want to hang on to that and remember for a long time. And I hope that the players feel that same sense of importance and urgency. Steelers come out strong. Don't let Cleveland change the narrative on you. Let the Browns stay down, 33 playoff games to 1. Let the Browns not think that they're going to suddenly surpass the Steelers and take over dominance in the AFC North. Don't let that stuff happen, because, you have the opportunity to keep them down and put them away. And I think that's a healthy goal to have in this game. Dominate, win the game, move on to next week. It's the playoffs. Gentlemen, speaking of playoffs, we're going to talk to you after a fantastic playoff victory by the Pittsburgh Steelers. Many thanks to FC for writing his article. his preview article for the Steelers-Browns matchup at SteelerFury.com. If you haven't seen it already, go there and see it. Steel Perch, thank you for being with us this week. I know it was a lot to ask you to come in, and I'm looking forward to your post report card for the Steelers. And Jeremy Coleman, please stay safe in Florida. You know, it's the state where there's a lot of dangers, both man-made and otherwise, nature in Florida. So take care of yourselves, and let's talk next week after our gigantic Steelers victory. I'm here, Will Masasek, a.k.a. Accidental Zen on Twitter, and Bradshaw DeBand on SteelerFury.com saying, go get them, Steelers.
Here we go.
Here we go.